Hi, welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name is Chuck Wood, and as always, I'll be your host. If you notice to the front of our desk, our set, we have our brand new sign for the Veterans Corner. It's been here, actually we've used this desk, it's the old Channel 3 desk, for a couple episodes already, but we've got our new sign in place, and we're looking forward to using that for many, many shows. With us today, we have Captain Joseph Sanborn. He's a member of the Royal Charter Composite Squadron of the Civil Air Patrol and United States Air Force Auxiliary. I always got to look at that because I think the last time you were here, I messed that all up. So, welcome. I'd shake your hand. I'll let the viewers know that I am battling somewhat of a cold. So,
understood.
So bear with me if you see me going into a little coughing spell here. And normally I shake the hands of the guests, but I'm not being rude today. Actually, I'm being polite. So, Joe, listen, it's great to have you back. The reason why you're here is because of what you do with Wreaths Across America. It's a special event. I know you've been doing it for a while. I went last year for the first time, and I was completely and totally impressed. And I think it's our job here at the Veterans Corner to help you in any way we can to get the word out. So once again, welcome back.
Thank you, Chuck. We appreciate that.
You know, the Civil Air Patrol, they pretty much, I mean, you guys are in charge of this, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about the Civil Air Patrol?
The Civil Air Patrol is America's premier public service organization for emergency services and disaster relief. It's congressionally chartered, and it's the official auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force.
Wreaths Across America, each year it seems like more and more people are hearing about it, they're learning about it. It's a work in progress, obviously, with you getting the word out and along with this show here. But can you give the viewers now a little history of what Wreaths Across America is and when it started?
Wreaths Across America basically started from one man's boyhood memory of visiting Arlington National Cemetery and being quite impressed with it, left an indelible impression upon him. This gentleman is Morrill Worcester of Harrington, Maine, who owns a wreath company up there, Worcester Wreath Company. In 1992, he found himself with a surplus of wreaths. He had 5,000 wreaths, tractor-trailer truckload, and with the assistance of the Senate in Maine, he was able to make arrangements to place those wreaths in Arlington National Cemetery. And this carried on for a number of years until the internet age hit in 2006, I believe, is when the images from the pictures from Arlington with the wreaths and the red bows and the snow really exploded, and local cemeteries wanted to partake as well, and people wanted to help with Arlington, and that's really how it began. Now,
you had mentioned they come from Maine.
Yes.
Now, is there any particular area? I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you, where do they come from? Now, we've already covered they do come from Maine.
Yes, Harrington,
yeah,
which is way up there.
It's got to be a pretty big farm.
Yeah, it's a very, very big place. As a matter of fact, they installed some new facilities this year to house the wreaths in the boxes to keep them from being all wet. The boxes were all wet in the past from being left outside, so it's a major improvement. They're always working to make things work a little better for the volunteers every year.
Yeah. Now, what makes these wreaths so special from any other wreath?
Well, it's how they're constructed. Each wreath is constructed of 10 balsam bows, and each bow is representative of a personality trait that every veteran has. And those traits are faith, love, strength, honesty, humility, ambition, optimism, pride, hopes and dreams, and concern.
And it's I know that that question has come up quite often. When we try to pass the word around about the Wreaths, and we don't have the knowledge that you have, although we're gaining it as far as so we can pass the word out and give an accurate answer to what makes them different. And people would think that they can just put a regular wreath on a site, even though it is a good thing. It's not one of the ones that from this program.
Right, volunteers build the wreaths up. They're all built in one facility, all up in Maine. So these aren't what you find in a grocery store. There's a lot of heart put into every one of them. A lot of volunteers involved with this around the country. I believe there was 2 million folks involved with it last year.
It's probably that many wreaths that are made.
Yeah.
I mean, how many?
I don't have that statistic, but offhand. But just for an example, Arlington has about 250,000, and we covered that. Connecticut placed about 17,000 last year, which is not where I want to be. I'd like to see us where the veterans are over 100,000 fallen veterans in Connecticut. So we have a ways to go.
And that's obviously, for those of the viewers, that's not just the state cemeteries. That's everywhere. I mean, there's veterans' graves throughout the state, and in every cemetery, large cities, small hometowns.
Yes, and it's going to take a lot of folks like me, to take on the responsibility of a location, for example. If you have veterans in your local cemetery, you can sign up as a location coordinator for that and have your own event.
Yeah. It's what's the process of transporting the wreaths? I know last year I saw many videos on the actual process. Yes. And it was beyond impressive. I mean, escorts, the whole 9 yards.
It's a dual process in that there's a national caravan to Arlington that goes from Maine to Arlington and makes stops along the way in schools, and they do talks and so forth. And the Maine State Police go all the way to Arlington, and other state police join along the way, and it's pretty exciting. On the other hand, you have your locations, which the wreaths all will be sent out on the 10th of December to all the locations around the country. And this is all done with the volunteer trucking companies who volunteer to the drivers and the companies with the trucks. They volunteer to bring the wreaths.
Yeah, the videos that I saw up in Maine, I mean, traffic was stopped for miles.
Yes.
And it was like a big convoy.
Well, we sort of learned from that experience watching the convoy. I actually was involved with a stop in Branford, and I guess you can say it got my mind working, and I decided that we should have one for Connecticut, a mini transport, and we're doing that out of Cromwell. We do it from Cromwell to Middletown. The location of where the wreaths are going to be stored is yet to be determined, but we're working on that now.
I mean, just the ones that Connecticut has, and what you're involved with. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands. We'll get into that.
Yes.
But it's just a small state like Connecticut. You look at some of these bigger states. I mean, there's a lot of wreaths, being shipped out of the state of Maine.
Right.
I'm sure, especially in the Northeast, anybody that travels the highways a lot, I'm sure they'd be able to see these convoys going by.
Yes, the I-95 corridor is where the convoy stays.
Right. How long has Connecticut been involved with Wreaths Across America? Have you been since day one, right?
I haven't been involved since day one. Connecticut's been involved since 2007. That's when the first event took place in Middletown. There were 2 Civil Air Patrol officers there, Captain Richard Abate and Colonel Anthony Chahaki, and they placed 2 wreaths. That was the beginning.
And it's obviously it's grown since.
Yes, it has.
I remember last year you were looking for 9,000. That was the goal last year.
Yeah, the goal was 9,500 last year.
And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves because we're going to talk about this, but since we're on the topic, you and your crew met the goal last year for the first time.
Yes, we did. It was the 10th anniversary of the event, and we were out there putting everything we had into it, asking the public to please let us honor and remember every single fallen veteran at the State Veteran Cemetery. It's a good start to getting Connecticut on the right track to honoring veterans the way they deserve to be honored.
Now, the state of Connecticut has two main veteran cemeteries, right? I mean, there's a few others that are out and about. I think we talked about this last year. I think that Fairfield County has one.
We have the Darien Cemetery, we have the State Veteran Cemetery in Middletown, and we have Colonel Raymond Gates in Rocky Hill.
The ones that you've been focusing on so far has been Middletown, the big one, right?
Yes.
And I tell you, just over the years, I remember up front where that was all open field.
Right.
I mean, it's completely filled up now.
Right.
And last year, those 9,500 were pretty much just for Middletown, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and we'll get to the numbers, in a little bit, but I know those numbers have certainly gone up.
Yes, they have.
Roughly how many grave sites, it just runs right into it, how many grave sites do we have right now in Middletown?
Well, grave sites is over 10,000, but veterans, the number is right around 9,700 currently.
Now, what's the difference?
You have the family members in there.
Spouses.
Yes.
And anybody that goes down to the Middletown Cemetery, it's almost like a mini Arlington.
Yes.
And you can see the spouse usually on the back of the stone.
Right. Right.
That's how about over at Gates?
Colonel Gates has 1,500.
Yeah, and that one, I've only been over there once. I drove through there, and there's no raised stones there.
Right.
Is that just a requirement from the state?
I don't know what the reason is for that, why the stones aren't raised. However, we do have a solution for the wreath placement. The wreaths do tend to get frozen into the ground if they're laying flat. So State of Connecticut Veterans Affairs is working on putting in stakes or some sort of system of holding the wreaths up so they can be attached to those.
Yeah. Now, my next question for you was, we pretty much covered it, and that was last year's effort of getting, meeting the goal. I mean, what went into that? I mean, there had to have been an awful lot. I know there was an awful lot just from what I saw, and behind the scenes there had to have been an enormous amount of effort on you and your team.
It's just asking and asking and asking and relentlessly asking people to support the cause and to think about the Gold Star families and the folks that are left behind, the veterans that are left behind. A lot of people ask me, why spend money on fallen veterans when the money could go towards the living? And as we all know, one of the greatest problems today is the treatment of veterans coming home, and adjusting to living as a civilian is unimaginable if you haven't been there. Yeah. And for them to see that we honor the folks that maybe some of them served with means a lot to them, because they know that their service matters.
The bottom line is, we've said this over and over again. I mean, they should never, ever, ever be forgotten.
That's right.
May it be, 10 years from now, 20 years, 100 years from now. I mean, these veterans need to be given the respect that they've actually obviously earned. Now, last year you concentrated on the Middletown Cemetery, but you have some big news about the Colonel Raymond F. Gates Memorial Cemetery in Rocky Hill.
Yes, for many years I've been advocating for Colonel Gates to be a full wreath placement event, and in the past it's been ceremonial only, where the ceremony is held, but there's no volunteer wreath placement. And finally, Veterans Affairs was able to reach the conclusion that it could be done. And I was given permission to do that, and we're working on that now, planning it.
So when we get to the point, I know from the 9,500 of last year,
Yes.
the goal has really gone up significantly, and that's obviously because of the 1,500, and then the new graves over at Middletown.
Right.
Now, can you share with the viewers what it takes to make this happen? I know this could probably be a whole other show on itself, because I've seen some of the work that you've done, going down to the cemetery myself for the ceremony this past year, which was, if anybody has never been to the Wreaths Across America ceremony down in Middletown, I highly encourage one to see this. It's a site that, it goes to a big ceremony in the beginning, speakers. Last year it started off not too cold, but it seemed like the longer we stayed out there, the longer the wind picked up,
Yeah.
and it turned pretty cold. I know that the wreaths were placed within, it was fast.
Right.
Everybody wanted to hurry the process up.
Right, right.
And there was enough people there at that time last year to do that.
Right.
So
I'm glad you brought that up. What we'd like to see in the future is for people perhaps to prepare for the inclement weather, dress a little warmer.
Yeah.
We are working on trying to shorten the ceremony a little bit so people can get out there. But the idea is that we'd like to see people spend more time. That each wreath placed is an individual ceremony in itself, that the time is taken to, if not say the veteran's name, at least look at who that veteran is, and what branch of service they were in, what was their service grade. Think about the dash in between the two dates. That's the most important part of the dates, is the dash in between. That was the life that was lived.
Excuse me. Just to sit there and say a prayer. Even though you met the goal last year.
Yes.
It was, just going out there, it was, people were just handing them and placing them. It would be nice to sit there for a moment and like you said, read the name.
Yes.
And actually give that person, the recognition.
I encourage folks to
Say a prayer.
Say a prayer. Have someone take a photo of you with the stone. That way, when you're scrolling through your phone, you see that and you remember it.
Tell us about the cemetery and the process. Actually, we've already covered this. What it takes to make this happen. I remember stopping up for the ceremony this past year, and there was you had the trucks. When you have the trucks come down from Maine, they're actually unloaded into other trucks.
Right. They're actually, last year we had them unloaded into a storage facility on Randolph Road. And from there, on the morning of the ceremony, we had to load them up into smaller trucks and bring them in.
U-Haul and
all kinds of trucks. We had utility trucks, pickup trucks. Everybody was there to assist, and we'll need the same thing this year, but we haven't yet determined the location as of yet, and we're working on that.
Excuse me again. I remember walking in and seeing a bunch of people unloading one of the big U-Haul trucks.
Yes.
Right behind the building. And people that I showed up with, we all stopped, gave a hand. We certainly encourage anybody that shows up this coming year to do the same. Your help is greatly appreciated. It's really something to see, especially once all the wreaths are out there. And if I recall, I do recall there was definitely snow covered.
Yes.
This past year.
Yes, it was.
So to see those wreaths out there at each stone, with the snow and all that, it was something.
It shows the effort.
Yeah. Now, not every grave site gets a wreath.
That's correct.
And what was it? The Jewish faith?
Well, it's based on the out of respect for the religious preferences or religious practices of each veteran. Jewish, that's correct, Jewish veterans, it's not a practice to put any floral arrangements or anything of that nature on a Jewish grave. So for that reason, we do not put wreaths on Jewish graves. But what we do is we have the same respect presented to the Jewish veterans as any other veteran. It's just simply the wreath is in place. You can still take the time to visit the grave, say their name, branch of service, which did they serve in a theater, which theater did they serve in. There's a lot of information on there.
Now, for those that are just going out there putting a wreath on the stones, are they marked? Is there a ribbon, or is there something that indicates?
Yes, there's a cross, the crucifix cross on the
stone itself.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where you can place one, where if you see a Star of David, then you wouldn't place one.
Yeah, so I mean, for all the volunteers that go out there, it's something from them, and it's also put out during the
Yeah, we explain it.
So everybody knows. I mean, this year's goal, it's obviously up there now. What do you got for each one of the two cemeteries?
Well, even though the number needed is a little less, we're asking for 12,000 because last year a lot of other locations called us asking for help. And because we're pretty well known, we've been on television and so forth. So we'd like to help them if possible. If things do happen, this is a very major operation with the logistics. And there are times when wreaths aren't delivered on time. And, if we have extras, we can save a ceremony from not happening. So it felt good last year to be able to help Darien and a few other small locations when they had that problem.
Now, what if a small community, I mean, every community has, from the large cities to the smaller communities, how many, if they wanted to place one of these wreaths at one of their war memorials, are they able to do that? Yeah,
so you can actually order what they call the Patriot Pair, where one wreath would go to you and one would go to a cemetery location such as Arlington or in the general pool of locations. So you could then place that wreath wherever you'd like.
Yeah. Because I know people have asked that, they were asking that last year over in the Bristol area. And I know Bristol's got a lot of, in Forestville, they have a lot of wars. I mean, actually every community does. And it's just a question, it'd be great for our viewers to know that.
Yes, the Patriot Pair is the way to go.
Yeah. And if you notice, I wrote that down, so when we at Post 209 over in Forestville order ours, I told you, as always, this show goes by fast.
Yes, it does.
Even when you're sick.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the show. Now, if anybody, how can somebody donate? Is there a website? For volunteers, any questions?
Everything is available at wreathsacrossamerica.org and /CT0028P.
Okay. If you didn't get that, it's wreathsacrossamerica.org /CT0028P.
Correct.
As in Paul. Please look that up. Captain Sanborn here is always looking for volunteers.
Always looking for volunteers and donations, please.
Yeah. So, well, that's about all the time we've got, Joe. It was great to have you back.
Thank you, Chuck. Really, it was great being back.
Once again, I'd shake your hand, but I'm not going to do that.
Understood.
I don't want you calling me up in a couple of days saying you got me sick. But it's obviously I'll be there again this year, and I'll try to bring some folks from this area, up to this ceremony. So, with that being said. I want a special thank you, as always, to our sponsors, and that's the American Legion family at Post 209 in Forestville, And also to Pam Shea for generosity, for donating items to the show, including this sign. We want to thank her also. Once again, thank you to our guest, Captain Joe Sanborn. That's about all the time we have. Thank you for watching. I'm Chuck Wooden. See you next time on the Veterans Corner. Good night.